Welcome to the first season of Bringing Home the W. I'm your host, Tanya Casole-Gouveia, and together we'll dive into the incredible journey of what it takes to build Canada's first WNBA team. On August 8th, WNBA Toronto kicked off an unprecedented campaign that invited Canadians nationwide to help shape the team's identity, including its name, logo, colors, and values. The response has been nothing short of amazing, with submissions pouring in from over 1,000 different cities across the country through the website nameyourteam.ca. It's clear this team is already capturing the hearts and imaginations of Canadians everywhere. Over the course of this podcast season, we'll dig into the creative and logistical aspects of naming the team with industry experts. Plus, we'll explore how inviting Canadians into the branding process is helping to build a truly inclusive and representative team. We'll also talk about what makes a logo successful, how the team's identity extends beyond the court, and even hear from athletes on how their team's logo impacted their mindset and performance. But to kick things off, today we'll explore why Toronto was chosen as the home for Canada's first WNBA team. Why here? Why now? This isn't just about basketball, it's about the business potential of women's sport in Canada and why this moment is so crucial. To help us answer these questions, we're joined by Teresa Resch, president of WNBA Toronto. Teresa, how are you?
Awesome. Good to be here this morning.
So happy to have you. Thanks for joining us. I feel as though maybe since May you've been pretty busy.
There's been a couple things going on since May 23rd in my life, that's for sure.
Seriously. So I do want to talk about that. Obviously, we're talking about design, and we're going to the community to build this brand, this identity, the mascots, the merch, all these things, but you need a name, you need a color. And so let's start for kind of the build up to May 23rd when the WNBA Toronto team was announced. What was that like for you?
How do you get a team? Is that what you're asking? How do you get a WNBA team? Well, here's the 5 steps if you want to get a WNBA franchise. No, it was a long process. And I think ultimately I was only a very small part of that process. Like, I think what you can do is actually look back to the passing of Title IX 50 years ago and follow a journey that leads us to that team in May of 2023. And I think what's happened in the last 10 years is the way that consumers actually, or fandom, I'll say, consume sports. Mm-hmm. And for a long time, it had to be you watched what you were given. I think we can look at the Olympics, right? Like the Paris Olympics were incredible. Mm-hmm. Like you go on CBC Gem and watch whatever sport you wanted, whenever it was live, it would be there. In the past, it was just whatever they would play during prime time, right? So these other people that were outside your scope were making the decision of what you watched. And that has changed. And I think with that has opened up an opportunity to actually see women's sports.
And it's such an untapped market because you see every time there's a big women's game, even I think with the women's soccer when they their quarterfinal, it was like millions of 3 million Canadians watched for in the Paris Olympics.
You go back to basketball specifically, and the NCAA final had nearly 19 million viewers this year, 3 million more than the men's final. And even if you look at, and this is NCAA, if you look at the Olympic final, it was 19.5 million watched that game of the men's, which was like the women's NCAA final almost had that. Give people the opportunity and exposure, and people will show up. So I'm excited because broadcasters and programmers and the people who are in those rooms making those decisions see it now because the data's there. They knew that they needed to expand because there was the talent level, the parity across the league would remain really, really high. And then the league knows we got to get good markets. So where are they going to target? They're going to target San Francisco Bay Area. They're going to target Canada, right? They want to grow. They want to grow internationally. They did 2 years ago, they did a fundraise for $75 million of capital. And as part of that, they said one of the initiatives or one of the things they wanted to do was to grow brand exposure specifically internationally. Well, what's Canada? Well, it's international. Even though we're just across the border, it's really the launching pad for the world for this league.
May 23rd happens.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Everyone's excited. I mean, even Drake posted on his story,
I think he gets it. He thinks it's about the women. It's about elevating women, and he gets that in this instance. We are literally a laboratory for learning sports business. And I can't wait to open the doors for a ton of women, young girls, people who are at the end of their careers to like be part of our team. Now, we're going to be able to hire maybe 30 people. But what we can do is provide mentorship and we can provide seasonal support. So, come back for another episode and maybe we'll talk about the mentorship pathway. But no, we're here to talk about the name and logo. So we'll get back to that.
WNBA Toronto is here. It's a thing. It's reality. What has been happening to this point? Because on August 8th, now we're asking the public to name your team. Help us name this team. So how did we get to here?
What's happened in the last 2 months?
What has happened? Yeah, what have you been doing? You had a lot of rest, I imagine.
No, none. Well, I'll say this. So May 23rd was our launch date. And we had been obviously in conversation with the league. And even before that event, press conference happened, they had already had a meeting on our calendar for the following Tuesday. And we meet, so they literally just come back from their holiday and okay, let's talk about name and logo. So yeah, you're gonna have to have that decided by November 1st so that we can make sure that you have uniforms to play in. And we're like, what? Anyway, so the production deadline and all those different things, the kind of the administrative, the boring things, really dictate a lot of the timing and the process of this. So anyways, we said, oh, wow, okay, we better get on this. So then we put together an RFP, so request for proposal for marketing design agencies to help us with this process. Because we don't have, like you said, it was me and our CFO. He's an accountant. I'm an operations person. We do not have expertise in this space.
Right.
We'll give our opinion for sure, but we are not experts. So we needed definitely help from agency. And I had been part of that process, but never led it before. The things that we said in there were basically yes, you need to create our name and logo. It needs to be across Canada, and we need to involve the public. So it's okay, bring us back and tell us who you are. The first one was really tell us who you are and the work you've done. And then we got to look at all, and it was incredible. The level of creativity and different agencies and the work they had done. It was so cool to see. You could tell everybody was so excited about it. So okay, this is good. So then from there, we had 4 different agencies come in and kind of pitch. And that's where we got a little more specific. So it was how would you address this project, right? So give us an idea. We didn't want them to come up with the name and logo specifically necessarily, but show us how you work. We're going to be working really closely with you. And ultimately, there's so many things going on at that time. We're literally starting a new business. We had to get a bank account, all these things that you don't think about. That, you think about the players and the coach and there's so many other things that have to happen before then. There's a couple agencies that were very traditional and they brought some really good ideas to the table and had the process that they knew would get us to a good spot. But then Metal, the problem solving agency, which is the agency we're working on with it, ultimately it's they read my mind and they brought this concept of we can bring together the best to do the best work. We wanted to make sure that all of Canada could be part of this. And that brings us to here. So that took about a month to get the agency on board. And then for a month, we've been putting together what this campaign looks like. And it was so awesome to launch and then to see all the submissions come in and to see that it wasn't just names. Because that's what's so important. It's yeah, you can put in a name, but a brand identity is so much more than that. That's what we're reaching out to Canada to help us inspire is what do we want this brand identity to be? And it's been so awesome to see people embrace that because, it's name your team and we want you to be part of it and not just submit a name and then come back and hope that we pick it.
Yeah.
It's not a contest. It's we want to shape this identity through our fans and the people who are going to be following it and the people who have a vested interest in this team.
That's the thing, the vested interest of I have a say in this, but it's not just oh, we're voting on, 5 different names and choosing. It's you're part of the process and there's got to be that reason behind the name. What is Toronto, to the greater community or even Canadians, right? So a name that is, I guess, holds the weight of the country. And so that's a big...
Yeah, no pressure, right? no pressure. Well, the other thing too is if it's a contest, it's well, I hope there's not just one person that wants this, if there's only one person that submits a name and we pick it, that doesn't work either. We actually want a lot of people. And I think that colors is going to be really interesting.
It's going to be fun. Yeah.
Right? Okay, so the process, you have to kind of go in order. Mm-hmm. So we're asking for inspiration now and we're getting all kinds of stuff.
So that's at nameyourteam.ca. It launched on August 8th, and basically you go to it and you can submit photos, you can submit just basically pieces of content to show
Audio?
your inspiration.
Can you audio?
Audio that you can text it as well. So if even I love the text on the
raccoon.
WNBA, the raccoon, because that is quintessential Toronto. I mean, it's inspo, right?
I think what we can take from it though, and this is what we're trying to do, is like, okay, why do people want raccoons? Is it because it's something that they see every
trolling?
day? Is it a joke? Does that mean that we want to be kind of fun in art, or do we need to be more serious? Like I think that you can pull a lot of other things from people's submissions. And that's why we also want you to like tell us about it. It's a creative journey, right? And like
you might start
at raccoons, but who knows where it leads you.
Yeah.
If you like dig down and like understand where that thought is coming from. And then some of those things can then influence like, what does the logo look like? Is it really whimsical? Is it more fierce? Is it super detailed, or is it something that any 5-year-old could draw?
Right.
Like there's all these different things that we need to consider through this process, and that's where we want all of Canada to help us out.
It's kind of exciting to see the involvement and the fact that you want to involve the whole, because as a president, you could be like, you could just say it. You could just say, this is the team, this is what we're doing.
This is another thing we want to talk about is I think that the perception is that's what happens when creating a name and logo. But it's not. It's not one person. We have to make sure that the league is on board with it. Like they have a say in it. We need to make sure that all the trademark lawyers have a say in it, because we can't be taking someone else's intellectual property. Obviously, our ownership will have impact on it. And we really want and hope that Canada does too. There's some things that will outweigh others. Like we could have this great name and ultimately the trademark people are like, you know what, they're using it in this capacity, so we can't transfer it. Like, I hope that doesn't happen.
Right.
I know I'm going to fall in love with something that then can't be mine. But ultimately, like, it's not just one person in a room deciding. I think that's what we're trying to make sure through this process we communicate.
So you're going to, I guess, get some input. It's like Canada is the parents of this WNBA Toronto team.
I like that.
So
we'll get down the path. So there's this like societal like point in time thinking about that as well. So maybe there's something, but like that's where we're looking for Canada and like tell us what you're hearing and like tell us what is resonating with you. And some things will just never be a go because of trademark or just like certain associations, but like it might lead us somewhere. The Raptors were picked because 30 years ago, Jurassic Park was everywhere.
Huge.
Think about dragons right now. House
Dragons
of the Dragon,
are everywhere.
Game of Thrones, whatever.
Yeah.
So like, I think that there's always going to be some sort of like cultural, societal, like what's interesting now, what's interesting here, that's going to influence it. I think that we'll definitely take a look at like how these things relate to current culture and also like what's happening in our society as a whole, right? Everybody is a winner in this because you're all going to have some sort of impact on this process. And I'm not an expert. I'm an operations person. I get stuff done. But there are people that are experts and they're going to help us on this journey, which I think is great. Like bring together the best to get the best results. So that's what we're really trying to do. And who's better than Canadians?
You want a name that resonates, and it's not just Toronto, it's with the countries. Over 1,000 cities. There's been respondents already on the website. You've gotten over 5,000 inputs already, and we've just started. So let's talk about, I guess, the process from now, and let's not talk process. That's a boring word, but like what's happening next.
What's next? Just what's next?
What's next?
Yeah. So we're gathering, like I said, we're gathering submissions, ideas, and honestly, like in parallel, we're taking those and like filtering, like what's coming out of that, right? Is there anything that's going, and like why is that, and like starting down that path. So the 28th is when kind of like the deadline for this, just because we have to start the design process. But what's happening after that is we'll bring together more of a groups of people of influence. So we'll have like an advisory council that are people that think about these things for their living, for their livelihood all the time. And we're constantly connecting with some of these people we brought in. So metal agency, designers at Supper, some academics, Dr. Edwards, bringing together those people of like what's trickling up, like what's hitting you in your soul. So that's a different type of expert. And then we'll also be looping in all the people from the league office and lawyers. So they'll be looking at all the different types of names that we're thinking about, but it does go in order. order. You kind of have to have a name before you can go make a logo, before you can pick the colors. And like the portal will be open so you can continue to like share some insight and any like get the dialogue that you want during those times. But we'll also be in communication directly with you if that's something that you ask to be updated on. Yeah. So the plan is to be a full launch of everything before the end of this calendar year, which is crazy, but we're really excited. And also, it's crazy timeline, but it's also really important. Like even like your intro, you're like, Teresa's the president of like Toronto WNBA. Like, what do you call it? Like, we don't have an identity. So it will be great to actually have an identity to rally around. So I'm excited that the league is pushing us for timing anyways, because we got to figure that out anyways.
Yeah. nameyourteam.ca for anyone who wants to have that input, and they can do it on text as well.
Text 1-833-662-3664.
One more time.
833-662-3664. But you have to text WNBA.
WNBA.
We have had that. Some people have just like text whatever their ideas to that number.
Oh, you need to get it.
Yeah, and then we don't actually get it. But we know you text something, but we can't see it. So you have to do text WNBA to 833-662-3664. And then it will work. But what I get is like different themes and trends, things like that. And then we'll get a daily kind of download of all the images that have been sent. So that's really interesting. And it's super like, the fans are so creative. Like all these different things. And like some will just be like a snapshot of a note that they wrote about something. It's incredible what AI can do. Like I've seen a lot. Yeah. Like you kind of like, what is that Canadian goose with tiger legs and a raccoon head? What is that?
Midjourney. They're just, I mean, people are going to be submitting. There are things that they would like to inspire this team. But for you as the president of this team, when we hear the name, we see the brand, what sort of feeling do you want the identity to sort of invoke in others?
No, that's a great question, because you think about this and you think about like the WNBA as a whole, right? These are elite level professional women. The league in and of itself is basically like a social statement. The fact that women are playing at elite level, a game dominated by men, and a lot of them are racialized women. Like 80% of our league is racialized women, which are continually being the minority and just ultimately not equal. And like you want something that like they can be really proud of, that represents them well. So like I think of strength. I think of like resiliency, because like they've had a fight for the WNBA to even exist. And I think in Canada, I think that's unique too. Like we're not necessarily like trailblazers, but we're different than all the other teams. And like, how are we different? I think in some ways we're also like trailblazers, right? Like Canadians and
basketball started here, right?
Oh, that's true.
Right?
Invented by Canadian. So I think like that strength, the resiliency, starting new, like not necessarily risk taking, but like just like fearlessness. And then also just like a lot of grace and a lot of empathy, but like that's hard to say in a name. But like I do think that that's something that Canadians are really good at is very much being welcoming. Just as a whole, it's a very welcoming country. I know as a new Canadian, I feel very welcomed here.
So there is some key stakeholders involved, and so you do have to get the league, as you mentioned. There's cohesion within all of the current 12 teams, right? The look and feel of them are all kind of in the same. They're in the same family. Yeah, basically.
Yeah, they're part of the WNBA family.
Yeah. So it's that those are some considerations. Who are some other sort of key stakeholders that you or key players, I guess, that care about the design of this?
Yeah, so the league is a good one. Like we definitely want them on side, and they've done this before, so they're great guides and partners in this, working very closely with them. Our ownership group, so Mr. Tenenbaum and some of the limited partners we have on board, will obviously have a say as well, and it's great because it's like a varied group, so lots of different perspectives. Myself and my team, a senior leadership team, we have head of revenue, head of marketing, head of finance, that all look at it through different lenses and how it will impact our business. But honestly, I really, like, the whole reason we're doing this is for Canada to really impact it. So, it's just like everybody, you don't understand. You always think like, oh, I'm just like one person. What kind of impact can I have? But it's true. Like, speak, like your voice is heard, and it will really inspire us to get to that final product, right?
Yeah, and no one can say like they did this without telling me, or like you hear that a lot.
Well, it's funny because yes, we'll be able to say that, but this is actually really important to our process. We didn't have to do this. Like, this is making the process so hard. Like, literally, it's like, think of the most difficult way to name your team. Like, well, let's do that. Like, if you think about it a couple days, it evolves, and like maybe you keep coming back to it, but maybe it turns into something else, or you get a new idea, or you talk with your friends about it and you come up with some variant, or I don't know, but like I think this is a journey we're all on together.
There's some stats that are on the WNBA Toronto Instagram just about like 14% are trying to use alliteration in the name.
Yeah.
There's over 1,000 cities that have had submissions, worldwide submissions as well, which is really interesting.
Yeah, there's like 84% were from Canada, but there was like 15 from around the world. Like the last time I talked to the kind of like data people, they said the website had been viewed from 58 different countries. And like, this is really Canada specific, but it also shows like how much interest there is on this process, and that this world is really borderless.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and then we are such a multicultural country.
That's true.
Right?
Like, if you think about all the new Canadians and where they're coming from, like their immediate families are probably not in Canada. They're somewhere else. And like, they're having daily dialogues with them. Like, the world is so small now with technology. It's incredible the impact you can have. So that also influences who we are.
So that's the goal, is to get the brand, the design, the colors. How do you know when you've got it? Like, what's success?
Oh.
What's success look like in this? Because there's no vote. It's not like a vote thing.
It's a good question. Like, I don't really think that there's a defined, like, this is what good looks like, or this is what perfect is in this process. It's a creative process. So I think what we'll have is a lot of different input, and we'll let it marinate a while. But it's something that I'm hoping like you really get a feeling of like, this feels good. And the other thing is like, it needs to be tested. Mm-hmm. Like, you can't just be like, oh, this is great, lightning, let's go with it. Like, no, you need to think deeply about it, and you need to like wrestle with it, and it needs to still be there. Mm-hmm. It needs to have, it needs to have resilience, just like our team is going to have.
Yes.
So it's something that, you connect with, and then it maintains its resiliency, and it just won't go away. I know something will happen, and the name and the logo and the color, it will all come together, and it will feel right. I mean, I think the biggest thing is like, we want to make sure that we have enough people involved in this process so that you have different views that are articulated and that we wrestle with and we talk about deeply, and it stands that test because it should be tested. So it's not just like lightning in the bottle. It's something that will like start there maybe, but then it will like grow over time.
It sounds like you're not taking the easy way, that's for sure, in this. Sure. But I think it is the right way, and I think it's a very Canadian way.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I think it's like a collaborative. It's collaborative, and there
is a lot of fairness in this process in a way. Like, there's no winners or losers. Everybody's part of it, and we're all trying to like be in it together. And I think that's very much to the core. A core Canadian like kind of ethos. And I think more than anything, like, this is just open. This is open. This is something that we want people to be part of. We want people to have impact on it. We're going to have a lot of naysayers. We're probably going to make some mistakes, but like, we're here to talk about it. And like, that's what we want to do. So you'll guide us on it, Tanya. I can't wait. And we'll see where it goes. Like, I think that's more than anything. We want to talk about this journey that we're on together.
I love that. It is going to be an adventure, that's for sure. And I will be your guide. Yes. And I'll have friends along the way come on in, stop in, and we'll make sure we'll get there. We'll have this WNBA Toronto team named by November or sooner. And I'm really excited and I can't wait to see what comes of this. So thank you so much, Teresa, for your insights, your candor, and just taking on this this heavy lift that you have to.
Oh, it's fun. The load is light when shared with all Canadians, right?
Okay, there you go. So you're part of the process, Canada. And so thank you so much for listening. And we will see you next week on Bringing Home the W.
Oh, I love that. Bringing home the W. Let's do it.
Let's do it.